You are listening to X-Wing Radio.
Welcome back, all you Sith apprentices. I'm David, that's Wesley, and you just tuned in to X-Wing Radio, your bi-weekly podcast from a galaxy far, far away. Also, just to clarify, only one of you is the real apprentice.
I don't know what I heard you say, but it was like Sent apprentice, and I was like, David, you're having a stroke.
Yes, I am.
But either way, fair enough. We're here. We're talking Star Wars. You know, that's not normal, I guess. So,
Wait, we're talking
um,
about Star Wars?
yeah, specifically Star Wars. Something Star Wars related. So David, uh, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you, all right? I'm gonna be very truthful with you. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's not a whole lot of Star Wars news out right now. We've already covered all the Kathleen Kennedy stuff. So that was what we covered last time. We are recording this podcast a little bit early, a week in advance, a week earlier than we normally do. Scheduling stuff. But so we might miss something. We might miss something. But you know what? There's not a whole lot of talk about that. That being said, David sees a ghost in his room, and it's floating around, and it's giving him concerned looks, and he's
Oh
giving
no,
him
I don't know
concerned
if
looks
you,
back.
I don't know if you could have heard that, but I just heard something sound like it blew up. Or maybe it was a
Like an
gunshot.
actual. Okay.
I don't know. It was loud. So
I
yeah.
didn't hear a thing, so I'm still going with the ghost theory. But
Ooh.
anyways, I mean, do you have anything Star Wars news related, David? On the top of your mind, in the back of your
So,
mind, in the middle
speaking
of your
about
mind?
ghosts, apparently, did you know that apparently Jedi can become ghosts? Like, there's this
Yeah,
thing.
pretty sure we talked about that last week.
That's right, we did.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have anything Star Wars news related. Maybe we should hop on the HoloNet and see what's new. I don't know.
I briefly did and didn't see a thing for my normal usual outlets. Um so I mean
Okay, let me
I'm
see if I
good.
can just find something really quick.
I'm good just jumping right into normal or the main body of the thing. Everything that I'm seeing has to do with Andor,
Hmm.
which
Let's see here.
obviously
So,
we've
there's an
talked about Andor
article.
before. What you
There's an
find?
article about the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, which we've already talked about.
Yep.
Just coming up soon. Let's see, it's a Screen Rant article. What is this? So it's a Screen Rant article that was posted 3 days ago, and the headline is, "I'm convinced Star Wars is finally about to show a planet that's been teased for 48 years." Let me skim through this article.
48 years?
Yeah,
What?
this A New Hope came out 48 years ago. Okay, so this is talking about Andor Season 2. What planet are they talking about?
Wait. You talking about Alderaan?
Maybe? Well, we've already seen Alderaan.
I know, but have you seen it in the
Dantooine.
main? Okay.
Dantooine is the one that they're mentioning. Okay. So that might be interesting.
I thought you were talking about Revenge of the Sith. I
No,
thought that
this
was the
is
article that you clicked on. So I
no,
was
no,
very
no. This is
confused.
different. This is a different article.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Dantooine, um, which it might have. So in the article it says Dantooine has never appeared in a live action Star Wars project before. Let's see. It says the closest it's come is in the Knights of the Old Republic video game.
Mm.
Um, and apparently in Star Wars Resistance, which we have not talked about or anything. I personally, I don't. It's more of a like kiddie show, so I don't really.
I watched the first maybe 3-4 minutes of the first episode. Not interested.
Mm,
Not just because it has to deal with the sequels and all that stuff. Like you said, it's more of a kiddie show. Not really something I'm interested in watching.
mm.
If
But
we watch that, then we're gonna have to watch what is it, Jedi Tales or whatever.
oh, the Young Jedi or Tales or whatever, yeah,
Yeah, young
Baby
Jedi
Jedi
Tales.
or Baby Jedi or whatever
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
Now, here's the thing, David. I have a kid, so I'm sure at some point I will watch that with her to indoctrinate her in Star Wars. But until that time in which she is able to understand what she's watching, I'm not watching that for this.
Mm,
But when I watch it, I will bring back reports as to what it's about.
mm. That's not so. All this is not the main topic of what we're talking about today.
No, no, it is not.
You know what we are talking about today?
I'm gonna have to remember what we're talking about today because I started uh reading the next project book thing we're talking about, so I gotta separate the two.
You're talking about Rule of Two. It's the second in the second book in the Darth Bane trilogy.
Mm,
Which really quick, this book to me was a lot more reminiscent of, and I know we said like Path of Destruction got to a point where it was kind of reminiscent of Darth Plagueis or the Plagueis novel.
mhm.
This book was more so reminiscent of the Plagueis novel.
Well, I think what's going to end up happening as we go through this is we're going to start to see because of the way that the Plagueis novel is a book novel. The Darth Bane books are the same format, I think, spread across multiple books.
Mm,
So we're going to start to see how it parallels in different ways. Now, there's a large chunk of the Plagueis novel that is about Palpatine and what he's doing. And in this book, we do get to see a lot of Xana.
yeah.
Uh,
This book,
now,
I would argue that Xana is probably, if this book is probably the main character.
yes, I
Because
think that is definitely true in this book.
mm, because
Um,
there are chapters that focus on Bane and his stuff, but most of
mm.
it is focusing on Xana.
Now, when we were talking about the ah, when we were talking about the Thrawn trilogy, right?
Mm,
The gap from I believe it was the first book to the second book was a matter of either hours or days. I'm pretty
mm,
sure is what I remember it being. Now, the gap from this book, from Path of Destruction to Rule of Two, is literally a matter of minutes.
mm,
We leave, I believe it's in the prologue. We leave Darth Bane with this young girl who
mm,
he has decided is going to be his new apprentice. We pick up with them running through the forest, going to the remains of the Sith camp to see if there's anything of value that they maybe might use, not necessarily monetary value, but just a value to them, specifically Bane, because uh, Rain or Xana at this point doesn't really know what's going on.
mm. Now, there is a time jump relatively early on,
Mhm.
but yes, the prologue and like the first 2 or 3 chapters are on I forgot the name of the planet already.
Wait. I just had it on there. Wait. I was supposed to be prepared. Oh no. Oh no. Um, David, you screwed it up.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I
Why'd you,
can't
why'd you,
remember
why'd you do
stuff.
this? Why'd you do
Um,
this? Well, see, I'm stalling now.
yeah, there's a planet with thought
Um,
bomb and everything. All that happened.
is something with an R.
Yeah, something with an R. We come into these things very prepared, y'all. Like we're incredibly,
As you can
incredibly prepared.
tell. Wait, no, I
Um,
even had like all the articles and everything pulled up, and then you know what I decided to do? Close that article because I was like, I don't need it.
mm, um,
David, why do you have to be so stupid?
I don't know. It's not a very Rusan.
Rusan! You know,
There
as
you
you
go.
said it, I found it. I found it in their article as you said it.
Yeah,
And
I was just flipping through the prologue, just looking for it. But yeah,
I
Rusan.
I knew it started with an R.
Mm. But yes, so Rusan. They're still on Rusan. That's where Rain or Xana is, which is her actual name.
Right.
Um, and her Sith name. Yeah, that's where Bane finds her. And she's already killed several Jedi. And then an interesting point happens. Because you know, if you I don't know if we touched on it with the in the last episode, like our last episode where we talked about the Darth Bane, the first book in the Darth Bane trilogy, Path of Destruction. But Rain was on Rusan with two of her cousins, which she thought were both dead.
Mhm.
Um,
Um, which, you know, she's half right. So
yeah,
there's
yeah. One of
good things
them,
to come out of that.
yeah, one of them died, but her other cousin, Tomcat,
What's his actual name? Because I can only
Derevit,
remember Talon Cat. There you go.
yeah, Derevit, um, is still alive, and so he ends up. So Xana and Bane go after they uh go to the Sith camp and investigate stuff, which Xana finds a journal from which one of the Sith Lords?
Cordova. Wait,
Cordova. Cor-
Cordis. Is it
Cordus, yeah.
Cordis?
That's right, Cordus. Yeah. That's a journal
I've
from
been
Cord.
playing I've been playing the Survivor games,
Mm-hmm.
and Cordova is one of the guys
Cordova, yeah.
in
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Um
why that name came to mind.
Chorus, yes. But yeah, Cordus is the had a journal and it talks about several other uh like Sith stuff. Basically it leads Bane to a Sith holocron, but that's further down the line. But Xana and Bane go to where the thought bomb created the big orb, just so Bane could kind of see what all was you know what all his work wrought, and that's where Tomcat finds them, and so Xana, instead of killing him or letting Bane kill him, ends up crippling him and basically using the Force to basically destroy his arm,
Mhm. It's
and then
interesting to see. It's interesting to see here. Um, Xana already starts to show her cunningness,
mm,
her brains, how she uses things to her advantage, and Bane recognizes this. So Bane is ready to kill her, or sorry, to kill uh Devin
Daredevil.
Daravit, whatever his name is. Is ready to kill him. Xana does this, causing him to essentially be ill-equipped to fight, which Bane is like, well, it's no point in killing him, whatever. But he sees this and he's like, he knows why she does it.
Mm,
She doesn't want him to kill Tomcat over here, as she's called him. Um, but he lets it slide because he had earlier, when they went to the Sith camp, he had let some raiders who were uh, rummaging through the stuff trying to find things of value. He had let some of them go, and she was like, "Well, why are we letting them go? They're unfit to live." And he was like, they could be of use, but there's also no reason to kill them. Like, there's no need to go through the effort of killing them when it's not necessary. And also, they can be used for our advantage.
But it could be fun, though.
It could be. Yes, no one's gonna get that reference. Anyways, so but anyway, so she brings back something that Bane had said literally no more than maybe an hour prior to this, saying that there's no point in killing him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bane just starts to see, he's like, she's going to prove to be an excellent princess, because one, I've sensed how powerful in the Force she is, how powerful in the Force she could become, and she's also extremely smart. Like, at such a young age, she's already showing just how smart she is. Um, so
Which,
we get to see that, and they start to build that up. And Zen at this point is only, I think, 12 years old, 11, 12 years
yeah,
old.
yeah. I was gonna
So
say
they're starting to
in
build her character up.
Path of Destruction, it almost makes her seem younger
Hmm.
in the epilogue. But yeah, she's like 11 or 12. Which
Yeah,
after the time, because after the time gap, she's like 20.
yeah.
Um,
Now the only thing that really ends up happening between now and the time jump, which really just dives into the book, the only thing of significance that really happens is Darth Bane goes looking for a holocron, which is what. So the little journal that you were talking about earlier,
mm,
the journal gave the location of the tomb of Freedon Nat, which is an ancient Sith Lord whose tomb had been lost to the ages, right?
mhm,
Yada yada yada. Well, Bane wanted to go there and see what he could find, and so he told Xana, he said, "Hey, uh, meet me at this planet over here. Um, you have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you're worthy to be my apprentice. And if you are able to meet me on this other planet, that will prove it to me."
mhm.
I guess there is a little bit more stuff to go around because they introduced a new Jedi.
Yeah. So I was just about to get it. So we also throughout this period jump back to Valentine Farfalla, who, if you
Hmm.
remember, was the Jedi general in the last book who kind of he had that fleet out in space, and then when came and reinforced General Hoth.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so now Farfalla is over the Army of Light. He's kind of taken up that mantle of General of the
Mm.
Army of Light. Um, but then it also follows a Jedi Padawan named Johan O'Thorn or Othon. Johan is what book mostly calls him. Um, it kind of follows them. So Johan, against Farfalla's orders, goes down to Rusan, to the surface, with a recovery team. Because Farfalla didn't know what the side effects of the pop bomb were, so he didn't want any force sensitives to go down to the surface, because he didn't know if there were any residual side effects. Um, and so Johan went down to the surface against Farfalla's orders and raiders that Bane had let go. And of course, they're talking about a Sith Lord on the loose, and so Johan's like, "Oh, I got to tell the general about this,"
Yeah.
and of course, no one believes him.
Yeah. Because at this point, obviously, what's believed is all the Sith Lords, all of the Brotherhood of Darkness, uh, were destroyed in the thought bomb.
Hmm.
So that's what's thought, that's what's believed. So the idea that one or two of them escaped, that's preposterous. That's not something that anyone's going to believe, and especially not something that's going to be believed when it comes from the likes of these raiders, who
Hmm.
are, I mean, they're just out for their own good. They're not, they're not. They're trying to make a deal. They're not trying to help anyone out,
Hmm.
besides themselves. So this is honestly what Bane wanted. He wanted them to go out, tell the story, rumors to go around, but everyone shoots them down because, you know, of the source of which the
Hmm.
you know thought or the
Now,
story came through.
mhm. Now, an interesting, also another character is introduced in at this time, around this time. Excuse me, around this time is actually the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic.
Hmm. It's a very
Uh,
familiar name.
yes. So actually, as we learned from Plagueis novel,
Hmm.
there were only a few families that were really like constantly getting elected to the Supreme Chancellor. And
Yep.
this was actually, one of the chancellors in the Plagueis novel. Actually, technically two of them, because actually had this last name. But more
Hmm.
commonly, probably associated with is uh, the Phantom Menace, because of course
Hmm.
the last name is Valorum.
Yeah. Chancellor
Yeah.
Valorum.
Yes. So yeah, again as established in the Plagueis novel, Valorum was a very common like political. That family was very like active, actively political, active in the
Hmm.
Senate. So
Very influential,
yeah,
very powerful. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
All
So
those different things.
so there's this Chancellor Valorum. There was a Chancellor Valorum earlier in the Plagueis novel, and then of course the Chancellor Valorum from the Phantom Menace was also in the Plagueis novel.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Which is
so
always, it's always interesting to see these things get tied together. Like, this book takes place 1,000 years before, well, not 1,000 years before. This book takes place uh, almost 1,000 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, when
mhm,
Star Wars gets kicked off. And the thing to think about is, like, you know, that's a long time. But the little tiny details, like the fact that the Valorum family had been influential in the Republic for just a long time, and they're being referenced here, like the small details are what really make this, like, series and book trilogy really, really well done, because, like, it makes it feel so much more like Star Wars, when you
mhm,
get those little names thrown in
yeah.
there.
So well, also one thing I do want to clarify. I do want to. So I mentioned established in the Plagueis novel. That might have been something before that, like the Valorums were like a powerful, influential family, because these books were published before the Plagueis novel.
I do believe that it's something that is mentioned in the Phantom Menace.
Okay, but yeah. So again, it's kind of something that already existed in Star Wars lore. The only reason I mentioned the Plagueis novel is because it literally spelled it out. Like, hey, the Valorums are like this really powerful family.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so that's
yeah,
that's why I thought of that. But yeah, these were written before the Plagueis novel. These books.
yeah. Well, we don't need to get into all the nitty gritty of the publishing dates because, well, hopefully most people don't know those. Uh, but um, yes, yeah, I do believe it is something that's mentioned in the Phantom Menace. It's been a while since I've seen the Phantom Menace, but I believe that when they're on
Hmm.
Coruscant, that does get mentioned at one point. But either way, because it's in this book, it is something that
Mhm.
obviously somewhere or another is known
But
around
yeah, I think
beforehand.
the biggest thing that we haven't talked about that happens before the time jump is what you were getting at before, where you were leading up to
What
with
was I
Darth
leading up
Bane.
to? Oh, well, yeah. So essentially, what Darth Bane ends up finding when he goes to Fionnad's temple, he ends up finding a holocron that will teach him how to make holocrons.
Mhm.
And this is something that he had been wanting for a long time. So around this time, we do end up getting a 10-year jump. Obviously he meets up with Xana. Xana had stolen a ship. The ship actually that Johan had been on, the crew and all of them. It was a female, a man, and his two sons. They were on the ship, and Xana ends up killing all of them, and then um taking the ship to whatever the planet is. Do you remember the name of the planet where they were meeting?
Um, I don't actually remember. Hang on.
Should have it right here. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Technical difficulties.
I think there's more memory difficulties.
Okay, that's fair too. I said this before we started recording. But on a normal night that we record, me and David are usually relatively sleep deprived. Um, but I am extremely sleep deprived at the moment, so my brain is working even less than normal. So now, as far as how David's concerned, I have no idea. Ambria.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay,
sounds right.
that's the name that I have here.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, we have a time jump. And they're still on Ambria. Now we do have to remember. Oh,
Yeah,
there is an
you forgot about the
important.
what happened at the temple where we found the holocron.
Yeah, well, I was just about to because did forget, and then yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So, uh, to get the holocron, not necessarily to get it, but while going through getting it, um, Bane encounters this creature, parasite of sorts, that latches onto his body and ends up essentially feeding on his dark side and energy. Now he ends up finding out that this creature is called an obelisk.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it has a very interesting ability that could be very useful to someone like Darth Bane.
So basically, think of it as a giant tick. That's almost pretty much how it's explained, or how it's what it's explained as. But basically, a bunch of these things latch onto him.
Yeah,
Um,
I think. Well, I think from what it was maybe like only like maybe.
okay, several at least, not a bunch, but
Well,
there
what I'm
were.
saying, I think he had like maybe one or two on his chest and maybe like one or two on his back. But the thing
Mm,
about these is, if left unchecked, they will grow across your body, like
yeah.
completely covering your body and multiply across your body. Now, in the holocron, not only did he learn steps to making a holocron, he also learned about the obelisks. He learned what they were called. He also learned that they were going to grow, feed off of him. Um, some of the downsides to having them. Like if they die, they release a toxin into his body that would kill him. Um, there there's no way to remove them, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
You also learn he also learns that there's some kind of a mask that he can wear, mask on his and some kind of gloves he can wear, so as to not completely cover his hands and face.
Mm-hmm.
But
But there's one important thing though. So the obelisks have kind of a exoskeleton shell
mhm,
that is pretty much impenetrable. You can't blasters can't penetrate it, lightsabers can't penetrate it, and that's
it's
what's growing all over his body.
yeah. So it's a thing that Bane sees as a like it's this thing that he sees and he's like, ah, it's a parasite. It's feeding off of me. It could be a hindrance, but I feel like its uh usefulness outweighs its harm. That anything could be too harmful.
Hmm.
So he ends up letting it grow, and uh that's kind of where we pick up. By the time we pick him up 10 years later, he's been in hiding. Him and Xana both. This is essentially scarred and deformed his body. He doesn't look natural, and so he doesn't go out and do a whole lot. He has Xana do things for him, or he has other people do things for him. So he's not actually having to directly work on things. He's been building his network of informants and people he can influence, all that stuff. But he's been very much in the shadows because of what's been going on with the Orbalisk and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and so by the time we get back to him in this after this 10-year gap, he is completely covered. Besides his hands, his face, I believe his feet as well.
Hmm. So yeah, he's like I said, it's basically you know forming like impenetrable armor, but he might be weaker in the dark side than he should be because they're feeding
Yeah.
off of his dark side. Which, so for most of this book, after the time gap, he's trying to make his holocron.
Mhm. Now, when we get to him, we learn that he had tried twice
Mm,
before the events of what we're reading about here. The first time was, I think, after 5 years. He attempted to make one, and it fell apart. It broke, and then he figured out what he probably did wrong. So what ends up happening is apparently like you can't take too long, because if you take too long, then it all falls apart. So he tries to do it faster and still ends up failing the second time. What he thinks ends up happening is because when you're making a holocron, you have to spend a lot of time focusing and concentrating on one thing, channeling your force energy into it. In this case, dark side energy, and the Orbalisks, they feed off the dark side energy,
mm,
so they're going to be stealing some of that. So
yep.
he's at the point where he thinks the Orbalisks might be the reason that he's unable to keep or to make his holocron, so he's thinking he might need to look into figuring out how to get these things off.
Hmm. So now this is the bulk of the book where it does cut back to Bane some, but the bulk of the story follows Xana and her stuff because she's the one that's actually out in the galaxy doing stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so hang on, trying to think, I'm trying to remember, where does it pick up with her
So it picks up with
after time gap?
her,
Is
and
it on
she's
Serena?
about to, it's on, no, it's on Ambria,
Ambria? Okay.
believe. I believe. And
I know we
she's
go. I know we
meeting.
go to Sereno at some point, but
I think Sereno's a little. I mean, it might be on Sereno. I don't actually remember. Anyway, is it the rebels are on Sereno, correct?
yes, yes.
So she might just be going back and forth.
Okay.
Because I don't think that Ambria and Serena are too terribly far apart. Or they might have a base on Sereno and I'm just misremembering it. Anyways, she is meeting with some rebels on Sereno, and essentially they're trying to use them to uh well, they're trying to use them,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of distract from anything that they might be doing.
Mm-hmm. So, an interesting kind of side note here. So, we learn a good bit about these um rebels. So, I don't know if this was intentional, but it almost feels like you could start to see like, you know, beginnings of a separatist movement
Hmm.
with this, which obviously kind of makes sense. It's Sereno.
Hmm.
For those of you who don't know, Count Dooku is the Count of Sereno.
Mm. I was
Um,
waiting for a point when they were talking about the powerful families for them to like start rattling off names and one of the houses to be Dooku as just
mm,
like a brief thing. Now, again, time of when this was written, there might have been it might not have been something to be, they might have thought about doing that necessarily, tying it in that much, but it was something that I did think about. I was like, "Oh, are we gonna hear Dooku?" And I was like, "Well, no,
mm,
I guess not."
yeah. But also again, I say you can kind of maybe interpret some of this as being like it's 1,000 years before Phantom Menace, but you can kind of interpret this as maybe being like beginnings of some kind of like separatist ideology forming. But at the
Well,
same
you think
time,
about it.
they make a point to mention that there's always been this kind of stuff going on Sereno, these kind
Mhm.
of ideas.
Well, you gotta think about the fact that the whole entire idea of the separatists was they didn't like the way that the Republic was being run, right? They
Hmm.
wanted change in the Republic. And originally, from the Plagueis novel that we've mentioned many, many times in this uh talking here, uh that's originally what Dooku wanted too. He did not like the way that the Republic was being run. He wanted change in the Republic. And through that thought process, Palpatine was able to seduce him to the dark side, yada yada yada. But here, I feel like what ends up happening is because so Darth Bane initiates the rule of two.
Hmm.
He completely changes the way that the Sith function in bringing on the rule of two, and his line of Sith are the ones that end up taking over the galaxy. Palpatine is in the line of Bane.
Yeah.
So Bane sets up everything that later down the line Palpatine uses. Now, that's not to take anything away from Palpatine, but Bane starts it all. So, like, the fact and the thought of this might be the starts of separatist movements isn't really that far fetched, especially when you think about the fact that, like, you know, that's just the Sith starting to, manipulate the different sides. Obviously they want to take over the Republic. Well, they have to have someone for the Republic to, especially since like when you look at it in the Clone Wars and in the movies, in the prequels, Palpatine plays both sides, and it kind of keeps him from being able to lose, you know,
So I think the whole idea behind
because he's not really a side or another.
the Sith grand plan is the fact of like it's this whole idea that like you know if I conquer the Republic, I'm going to be viewed as a tyrant. But if I
Yeah.
save the Republic from this,
Mhm.
these people over here, I'm the
Yeah.
hero.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole idea behind the Sith Grand Plan.
Yeah. And I mean, like, so, like, right here with what's going on with Bane and his dealings with these uh rebels, they mention it. It's like he doesn't really care one way or another if they win or lose. Like he honestly doesn't expect them to succeed. Xana at one point even makes the comment. She's like, "Why don't we help them out more so that they can end up? Like we want to overthrow the Republic." And he's like, "Don't be so short sighted in this, because like you said, if you take over, you're going to be seen more as a tyrant." So if he comes in with this whole big army, there's going to be plenty of people who don't like him. Now, obviously, I understand, like, not it, despite the way that the Emperor Palpatine ended up taking over, that doesn't mean that everyone loved him. But people were not aware of what was going on at that point in time. They
I
didn't
mean,
realize that a Sith Lord had just taken over and that bad things were about to happen.
think about in Revenge of the Sith. There's even that line that Padme makes. This is how
Mhm.
democracy dies, with thunderous applause. Like most
Yeah,
of the Republic viewed Palpatine as a hero,
yeah,
at least at that point. Obviously later down the line, when Empire started, kicking up into gear, people realized, hey, this guy's a tyrant. But still,
yeah, yeah. But you know, he
at first, people liked Palpatine. People wanted him to you know, they
it's
viewed
kind of
him
like
as
the
a
thing
hero.
of it's kind of like the thing of just came to mind. But do you remember that the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes episode where the royal guards were dying, and the way that they ended up finding out how they were dying or being murdered was when they put on the uniforms, they had a
Oh,
belt
yeah.
strapped really tightly around their waist. And the
Mhm.
guy would come in while they're on their shift and he would stab them with a very fine point, which would
Mhm.
cause them to have, which would puncture their side. When they took the belt off and the pressure went off, they'd bleed out and die.
Mhm.
I think that's a very similar way, and I think we see
Yeah.
a lot of this idea throughout this book is Bane has in the past book, he's a big guy. I mean, Bane, I think that I mentioned at one point he stands like 2 meters tall. He's a huge dude over here.
Which for those of you from the civilized part of the world, that's 6'6".
Yeah, this is a big dude. All right, and he's from all the mining that he did on Apatros, he is just jacked, like he's an opposing dude. And we see
Mhm.
him use that so much to his advantage throughout the first book. He tries to just, you know, he's 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 just trying to beat down everyone. But then we see near the end of the last book and then starting into this book, that's all out the window. That's not his plan anymore. He's trying to be cunning. He's trying to be conniving. He's trying to, uh, you know, be underhanded. He wants to stab you in the back, and then later you find out that you're about to die. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how he wants to slowly let things bleed out. He doesn't even necessarily need to be around for the Sith Grand Plan to come to fruition. He just wants to set things in motion so that later down the line, someone else, part of his order, can take over, which is into what ends up what ends up happening with Palpatine. And the Republic doesn't even realize that they're dead by the time
Mhm.
they end up dying.
Yeah. But one thing that I don't feel like a lot of people um where was I going with this? Oh,
I don't
right. So
know,
okay, so Xana, when she was
not your
talking to
brain.
Bane about this, like, why don't we just like, use these people to build an army to take over the Republic? One idea that like Bane is trying to like get across is the fact of like, no, that was the old Sith Order.
Yeah.
That's the way they did things. And
Mm.
it didn't work. How many times did a Sith Order rise, a Sith Empire rise, just for to be defeated by the Republic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like and even in Path of Destruction, I mentioned that several times. It's like the Sith Order would just rise, get defeated by the Republic, fall. Another one would rise, get defeated by the
Well, not
Republic,
even
and fall.
necessarily, not even necessarily get defeated by the Republic. Sometimes they would defeat themselves from
Yeah,
within. So
yeah.
there's that was the whole reason for the rule of two. Bane saw that they were constantly. I mean, it wasn't even necessarily that the strong would survive. Sometimes the strong would be overwhelmed, and Bane wanted to rule all that out. So he wanted to have it where there's only two, as we've said before, only two. A master to embody the dark side, and a apprentice to crave it. Power to embody the power, an apprentice to crave it.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I do want to touch on this briefly before we get too far into talking about this because it's kind of a very quick thing that they mention, but it's a very important thing pertaining to Xana. Um, so we've seen a lot of the force abilities that Darth Bane possesses.
Hmm.
One of his most powerful ones is probably the Force Storm that he can conjure. But an area in the Force that he is lacking in, but Xana is actually pretty proficient in, is the what's it called? Um, Not witchcraft, but like Force sorcery. Is that what it is?
Sorcery, yeah,
Something
something
along
like
those
that.
lines. Um, so I mean, I think all of it is probably some form of sorcery, right? But anyways, so that is something that he starts kind of pointing her in that direction, um, of Sith sorcery, and starting to get her started on that road. He said he can only take her so far down that road because that's not something that he is, as powerful in.
Hmm.
He goes and explains to her how everyone kind of has their own gifts. Like they not everyone is going to be proficient in every area, but you might be better in this area and someone might be better in this area, and that's kind of their gift. And hers is Sith sorcery. And so he kind of sends her down that road, and she ends up using that multiple times throughout the book. So that is an important thing to remember while we're talking about this.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so basically the long story short of the whole um Sereno arc. So these rebels' whole plan is to I don't remember, are they trying to kidnap or assassinate Valorum?
Assassinate.
Yeah. So at this point, Valorum is no longer Chancellor of the Republic.
Mhm. He
He's
was
retired.
already he was already in his first halfway through his first term when we saw him 10 years prior.
Mm.
And then he already went into his second term. So he's probably been retired for probably around 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Also, an interesting point that we didn't mention before is kind of a side note, but they also make a point to mention that Valorum was the first non-Jedi Supreme Chancellor in a while,
Hmm.
which is interesting
It is
because,
interesting to see how make your point, and then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to say.
but it's interesting how, like, even back then, how involved the Jedi were in politics, which is also another thing, kind of the whole point of that whole, introducing um Valorum back then, before the time jump, is he ordered the Army of Light to be disbanded.
Hmm. And Jedi activity needed to go through the Senate,
Yeah.
which is something that obviously we see a lot of within, like, Clone Wars. We've been talking about that recently, which is how involved the Jedi is in the Senate. But I feel like it's that that is definitely the case in Clone Wars. But Here, the Senate's just getting involved in the Jedi.
Mm.
And it's a thing that's like it is very interesting because, you know, uh Jo Johan um is very aggressive. He's like 18, 19, I think. He's around 19.
Mm.
When we first meet him, before the time jump there. And at this point in time, he's very aggressive. All he's known is war. Now, David, where have we heard that before? Jedi who only know war. We get that in the Clone Wars, right? How Jedi's are supposed to be keepers of the peace, correct? Not warriors, right? Right? That they're supposed to be more like pacifists, I guess, in a sense.
Supposed to be, even though we don't seem to see that many Jedi who actually are that.
Yeah. Like not most I mean obviously I understand when you're writing something, especially or like Star Wars, these are action movies they're supposed to have action. So I understand. But it's like all we get of the Jedi are warriors, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Jedi were based off of not necessarily the Jedi, but Star Wars has a lot of similarities to like samurai and stuff like that. Um, and so you know, there's those things, but I feel like the samurai do a lot better job of being pacifists than the Jedi do. The Jedi are really bad at this, you know. They just seem to constantly be making boneheaded mistakes, constantly
Which,
trying to get into fights with people, constantly trying to do things by using their lightsabers instead of just being
which
the
you know,
Force. I don't know.
you'd think after 10,000 years or however long the Jedi Order has existed, you'd think they'd be better at that.
Yeah, well, the thing too is like it's interesting to see here. So this is again around 1,000 years before we see the events of Phantom Menace. Um, and you already, as we're discussing here, you already start to see how far from what they should be and what the Jedi Order is supposed to be, how far away from that they are. Now, there is something to be noted here. We probably should have a longer conversation about this at a later time, but the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was built on, I believe, the ruins of a old Sith temple, and their
Hmm.
thought within doing this was that they would sit on it and crush it, like hold down the dark side, essentially. But I kind of think that ended up hurting them in the long run a lot more than they were expecting.
Well,
Um,
and then I mean, like, I don't know how well that works. Like, even in canon, I know they dive into this in gosh, what is it? The Thrawn trilogy.
yeah,
But even in canon, Palpatine turned the Jedi Temple into his own personal palace.
yeah,
So, and he probably was drawing on that ancient dark side, like, stuff that was still there from
yeah.
when it was the Sith Temple.
So it's interesting to see that. It's interesting to see how far the Jedi already have gone at this point in time. Um, but uh, getting back to Valorum, um, Johan is with him. He had been the personal advisor, Jedi advisor to Valorum for a long stint of time, and now they're kind of friends. He kind of goes along with him because Valorum doesn't think he's important enough to need bodyguards, so he goes along with him to protect him, which ends up being a really good thing when they get to Sereno here, um, because there's an assassination attempt.
Hmm. And this is that same group, again, that same group of, like, rebels that, Xana had kind of, well, really been, like, they thought all this was their idea, but really it was her kind of like, hey, you need to do this. you know.
Yeah. She
Um,
she uh she used them. I don't know if I don't think she necessarily even like uh not necessarily mind control, but like I don't think she used the force to get them to think things. I think she used it to get them more receptive. So like,
mm,
it kind of was their idea, but she kind of floated ideas out there and was like, "Ooh, look at this," and they're like, "Ooh, butterfly," and they followed it.
mhm. But anyway, again, I just read this. I shouldn't be having to. I shouldn't be misremembering this stuff this bad. But they do end up all dying, right?
Yes, all of them
Yeah.
end up dying. Well, no, not all of them end up dying. Two of them run away.
Mhm.
Two of them that later on end up going and kidnapping Xana and taking her back to their master benefactor. I don't really know what you would
Yeah.
call him. He's the guy who's essentially heading up the rebellion.
And this is an important part because he is so he's one of the like I don't know if he necessarily has an actual title. Like I don't think he's a count or anything, but he's a member of one of the like really wealthy families in Serena.
hmm Um,
But he's also
he
very into Sith artifacts and Sith history and all that stuff. And he pretty like almost immediately figures out Xana is a Sith.
so he's just a collector then, I guess.
Um, so he is slightly force sensitive.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Maybe an apprentice.
well, that's actually the idea he pitches to Xana, to which Xana quickly informs him, no, I'm just an apprentice myself. And
Honestly, I don't know why she would have said that. That was a dumb move.
I mean, she should have learned from Palpatine, still be an apprentice, but have, your Darth Maul over here and
Mhm.
you know,
So I was listening to this and I was really curious how this was going to play out because I was sitting here and I was aware of I was aware mostly of who Xana ends up taking on as her apprentice. Um I haven't completely read through the last book. Um but I have read like their last battle, the final fight between Bane and Xana, and how it goes out and how Xana ends up picking her next apprentice. And so I was sitting here thinking about all that, and I was like, okay, well, obviously we have another book, and it's in the Bane trilogy, so he can't die yet.
mhm,
And then I was like, okay, so there's that. And then I was like, okay, and then this guy can't be around because he's not the next one in her line.
mhm.
And so I was like, how's this
So
gonna play out?
yeah, so
So how does it play out?
well, this guy also has 8 Umbaran shadow troopers, shadow stalkers,
Uh,
something like that.
they essentially are the um Umbaran. Hold up, where have we heard that before?
Pongrel.
Man, that guy sucks. But anyways, yeah. So uh, essentially, one of the other they're slightly force sensitive people who are trained to be assassins. That's about all that you need to know about it.
Mhm.
He's got some like ninjas essentially.
Yeah, specialized in killing force sensitives, basically. Um, but so the whole do we have a name on him? Hang on.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're bad at this,
Um,
y'all. But his
to
whole
be fair, I will take some blame for this because originally this was not our day to record. Um, but uh we ended up making it. So I don't know if we
so
would have come prepared
yeah,
more or less
Wesley
later.
Wesley texted me an hour and a half before we started recording. Is like, hey, you want to record tonight? I'm like, okay, fine. So yeah, there's that. So
Well, I
I
said
don't
I'd
have any
let you know
notes.
if I could do it earlier. Well, let's be honest here, David. Would you have made notes if we had waited to do it?
Maybe.
Okay, I
Um,
doubt that.
yeah, but
Um,
no prep time whatsoever, barely any whatsoever. So here's that. But anyway, so this rich dude's plan basically is to so he's got all these Sith artifacts, and he knows the location of another holocron.
yes, a holocron for the Sith Lord, Sith Lord. Uh, what's her name? Um, Bella Dzu,
Bel
Dzaru.
Belia Darzu, yeah. I literally
Yeah,
just opened it and it's right there.
yeah, her fortress on Tython. Now, this guy's name is, it should be somewhere in here.
Hetten.
Um, Petton?
Hetten.
What a weak name.
Yeah. So Hetten, his plan is basically to ambush Bane and, have his ninjas go, snip, 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 and cut him up and kill him.
Is he getting neutered?
Oh, why? Why is that? You know what? Never mind. But I don't.
So wait, if Bane is covered in the obelisks, right? From for everything but his hands, face, and feet. How do you use the bathroom? Does that get expelled through the dark side? Can he turn what he eats into dark side energy
Um,
instead of using the bathroom? Or does he just have to have gone 10 plus years without using it? I mean, might have a hernia or something.
you know what that reminds me of?
I don't know if I want to know.
So I know I had the Studio C reference earlier, but there's that
Uh-huh.
one Studio C sketch where they have one of the Star Wars parody ones. It's like Matt's playing like the role of Jedi Master, and he's got like the class of younglings. And, I think it's Steven's playing one of the younglings, and he's like, he keeps asking if he can go to the bathroom, and Matt's like, well, if you would just master the Force, you wouldn't have to go to the bathroom. It's one of the perks. So, maybe that's more canon than they thought. Yeah,
Yeah, well, hey, I think that's well, I mean, let's be honest here. You don't have time for all this. It's just too much to have to deal with going to the back. I mean, what do you do when you're in the middle of a fight and it just keeps dragging on and on and on? And you're like, I gotta pee. Do you just start going? I mean, honestly, there's so many questions that don't get answered.
true, true. I don't know if I
Where were
want an
we?
answer, but
Where were we?
um, Hetten and Xana going to confront Bane.
So what happens to that guy?
Well, Bane pretty easily kills all of his Umbaran Shadow Troopers, and then kills him pretty easily, and then starts trying to kill Xana.
So was Xana like participating? Was she trying
Oh,
to
she was
help?
just watching.
Oh. So what was her plan with all this?
Well, you see, she was actually bringing all this stuff so Bane could get the location of this holocron.
Oh. And so she tells him that, and he immediately is like, "Oh, good job."
Eh, I'll be honest, I don't remember this at all.
David, you're useless. Okay, so he starts beating her down with the
Yeah.
lightsaber. She's doing the best he can to block all this because the thing is so in the last book, whenever like uh Bane was training with uh Cordis, uh he makes the comment how how different it was when they like there was a fight that they had that was so much different because he could tell, or no, when he eventually actually had the fight, you could tell he wasn't holding back like he was when he
Mm,
were training. Xana makes the same comment here. She's like, this is the most fierce I've seen Bane in a fight because he's not holding back at all. He is legitimately trying to kill me. So she was doing her best to
mm.
parry and block out
So,
all of his attacks and everything like that. But what ends up happening, so the reason that he's so aggressive and angry here is because back to the Orbalisks, they are injecting toxins into him that kind of fuel his rage, essentially. And so he kind of is at a point where he's lost control. But eventually Xana is able to talk him down,
mm,
and he's like, "Okay, you haven't betrayed me. Uh, you know, let's just, let's be on our
mm.
way, and I'm gonna go to Tython." Um,
So the thing about this holocron though is it actually has more information about creating holocrons. So that's why
mhm.
Bane wants it. But also, I wanted to kind of skim through the last bit of this chapter here after this fight. So, because there's a couple of good quotes here. So, um, Xana is basically talking to Bane. She says, I knew you had the strength to defeat them, Master. That was the only reason I didn't come to your aid during the battle. And then Bane responds with, and what if you were wrong? What if they had killed me? And this is like the most like where you kind of start like really see like Bane's teachings are really taking hold in Xana because it's like
Yeah.
because her response is then you would have been weak, unworthy of being the Dark Lord of the Sith.
Mhm. Yeah. It's funny, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it's funny because later on, when what's his name?
Darvit. That's actually the next chapter.
Darvin?
Darvit.
That's
Darvit.
Darwin. Darvit. Whenever he comes back in,
Yeah.
later on, there's a point where him and Zena are back together, and he keeps telling her that this is not who she is. She's not a Sith Lord. She's not a Sith. She's not a dark side user. This is not her killing people, not caring. And it's funny because he keeps saying that, but this is totally what she is. Like, there is probably a tiny little bit in her that, like, whenever she spares his life, whenever she spares another life, maybe it's slightly out of compassion. But when you're reading it and you're seeing from her side of things, she's only doing what she does because she thinks it's going to be beneficial. She's
Mm.
plotting, she's scheming, she's planning. She is a full-blown Sith. I mean, we even see it later on at the end of the book, like when she takes the deal with the healer. she was figuring out whole entire time while she was sitting there thinking of what her options were. She was figuring out a way to get out of
Mm,
it and come out on top how she wanted. She's a full blown Sith Lord. I mean, the thing is too, this guy over here only knew her when she was up until when she was 12.
mm,
He hasn't known her the past 10 years when she's been getting indoctrinated into the Sith. Like, he
mm.
doesn't know who she is.
Yeah. So also, okay, so kind of jumping into Derivate here, because like I said, he comes into back into it in this next chapter.
Before we get too far onto that, while Bane goes off to Python to find the holocron and all that fun stuff, he sends Xana to go to the Jedi Temple undercover as a Jedi, to get information on how to remove obelisks, if that's
Yeah.
possible, and if it can be done without killing the host.
Yeah. So all these years, Derivate has been living as a healer on Rusan.
Hmm.
So he'll heal
Which
people
I
or
think,
whatever. Kind of basically living as a hermit, and only like when people like come seek him out, that's when he'll like okay, I'll heal you. Because he's
yeah,
got mild force abilities, but nothing Jedi or Sith level.
yeah.
Um, but that's when the Senate dispatches several Jedi and a big work crew to Rusan to build a monument to all the Jedi who died during the thought bomb. And do you know who's heading up this project? The Jedi
Mm-mm.
who's in charge of this project?
I didn't read the book.
Johan.
One?
So Johan notices like a bunch of this stuff, you know, a bunch of the project stuff is getting vandalized over and over and over again. And so he, decides to do some research into it and comes across Derivit. And Derivit makes the comment. They're talking about stuff, and he makes a comment about this surviving Sith Lord, Darth
Hmm.
Bane, because Johan was the one who mercenaries from the beginning told that there was a Sith Lord, told him there was a Sith Lord on the loose, and so he takes Derivit back to Coruscant to so he can report on this too, so someone will actually believe him. He's got an eyewitness.
Yeah. Because the thing is back when the Raiders and all that was going on, that was back in the 10 year before the 10 year jump.
Hmm.
But Johan's never really quite put that away. He's always been like, I think there is something to that. I've been told to forget about it. I'm gonna do my best. But then it's like it was in the back of his mind, and as soon as Darvin made the comment, he was like, "This is exactly what we needed. There's proof. Now we have to seek this out and
Hmm.
find out. And I need the council to be on board with this, so I need to bring you back to Coruscant to speak to
Yeah.
the council."
So Johan goes talks to Farfalla about a bunch of this stuff. Well,
Fa 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 fa
yeah,
fa fa fa
Farfalla.
fa 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 fa
Well,
fa la la la
uh,
la la
Di-
la 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 la.
you do realize I'm not cutting that out, right?
Yeah, that's why I did it.
Okay. Um,
Good luck trying to find out where it's at.
yeah, I know. But Derivit, um, goes down and waits for Johan and Farfalla in the archives, where he sees a familiar face.
But technically, he just smells a familiar scent. No, what actually happens is so when Xana went to undercover in the Jedi Temple and went to the Jedi Temple there, she dyed her hair black, and then obviously Darabin hasn't seen her in 10 years, so there's obviously that there's he doesn't know exactly what she looks like, but when he goes in there, he sees her, and like her force essence reaches out, and it's like, I know who that is, and it clicks, and he's like, oh, and so that happens.
Mm. So yeah, so he goes and he's like, "Oh crap! I just ratted on you that you're a Sith, and we're in the middle of the Jedi Temple, and you're in danger."
Yeah,
So Daravit, tells her about all this stuff, and they go off to try to get out of there. So that uh,
they do.
yeah, they do. Um, but they're kind of sloppy with the how they get out of there. So Xana knows where Bane is, knows what planet he's on, but doesn't know the coordinates.
Hmm.
So they look it up on the library computer.
I mean, why not?
Yeah. And then they book it out of there. But when Farfalla and um Johan
Johan.
get to the library to try to find Daravit, people tell them, Daravit was with this girl and they left. And they mentioned they were calling each other Rain and Tomcat, which Johan remembers that was um what the cousins had nicknames for each other because Rain or Daravit and Xana are cousins.
Yeah.
Um, but
And Johan thinks back to the story that Darvin had told him and is like, oh, Rain was with Bane.
yeah,
So
yeah. So they put 2 and 3 together and make 5, and there you go.
17.
Exactly. Um, and then so this is also kind of a PSA for everyone. So when you go to the library and you look up something incriminating on the library computer, you might want to exit out of that window when you leave and don't just leave
David,
it up.
David, are you speaking from personal experience?
Maybe.
What incriminating thing have you been looking up at the library?
Okay, people like freak out when you look up the recipe for C4. I don't understand. I mean, it's just mildly explosive.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I hope you've learned from your mistake.
Yeah, I use
Next
incognito
time,
now.
close the window. I wonder. I haven't been to the library in years. I wonder, first off, what the computers look like. And second off, I wonder if they have incognito mode. Or if they have something like, if they can disable that or something.
I don't know. Um,
Well, David, apparently you do, since that's what you use. I was
mm.
just saying you should. I was just saying you should, go over there
Well,
and close the
it's
window.
I,
Maybe
I,
delete the history. I'm not sure.
yeah, but it's worse when you look up how to acquire uranium. People freak out even more about that. But
Or where's Uranus? I don't know. It's where uranium made me think. I like Jupiter and
it's also like
other planets.
it's also like donating blood. I mean, I don't know why people ask so many questions. I mean, like, whose blood is it? Why do you have so much? Why is it in a bucket? I mean, stop asking questions. I'm trying to be nice. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can wring it out of my clothes. It's okay.
yeah. Anyway, we're getting way off topic.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much blood in this, but I'm sure that there's dead people. So.
But yeah, so why it's important to exit out of the window, on the library computers because people
So you
just don't
don't
walk.
get followed.
Yeah, because that's what happened.
Stalker.
Farfalla and Johan walked up to the library computer that Xana and David were at, and they were like, "Oh, they left open Google Maps to where they were going, so we need to."
So, David, have you ever watched the movie Are We There Yet with Ice Cube?
No,
And
I
it's an
haven't.
old early 2000s movie. All right, so the gist of the movie is this guy is interested in this girl, but she has kids. And long story short, he's friends with the girl, and he takes her kids to
He
where
takes her
she's at a
kids.
he takes her kids to a work function that she's already at, so
Oh,
he's
okay,
traveling with her
okay.
kids. But anyways, they don't like him. They want their dad. But anyways, they use his car. His car has maps on it,
Mm,
and there's a point where they run off, and he's not sure where they go, and he looks at it and sees their map, and he knows exactly where they're gonna be because they left their Google Maps thing open. So if you've seen that movie, then you know exactly what we're talking about here. He saw where the path was. He saw a little pin and said, "All right, this is
mm.
where you are. This is where you're going." They were
So,
basically ahead of
so
the game.
anyway, long story short, Farfalla and Johan do exactly what Mace Windu does in Revenge of the Sith, and oh, there's a Sith Lord. Let's go kill him
Let's go poke it with a stick.
with a light stick.
I think it'd be better if you used a heavy one if you want to squish it. Unless you want to use like a whip, like you get one of those really light whippy sticks, the kinds of ones that one guy finds in the woods, and the other friend's got its back to him, and then the friend goes and whips his leg, and then that one friend goes scampering off like his
Okay,
tail's on fire.
but Wesley, that was one time, okay?
It really hurts. Actually, honestly, I don't even know if it's one time. I know that pain. That pain is that's the thing is David. I don't our generation didn't get like our parents didn't use switches on us, like I got spankings growing up, but I didn't have to go get a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who don't know those switches, good. But the thing is I didn't have to do that, right? My parents were a little more civilized. They got the wooden spoon from the kitchen or a 2x4.
If you were lucky, it was not the slotted one, the slotted spoon.
Exactly, exactly. But that's how we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, while our parents didn't use the Switch, our friends did. And boy, did we get each other with those things. It's kind of like rat tailing each other in the locker
Mm-hmm.
room, except with a stick. But, you know, I don't think that that's going to be the best thing to use when you're going up against a Sith Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But yeah. So anyways, so what ends up happening is there's a confrontation between Xana, Bane, and I think it's
Five Jedi.
four five Jedi. Five Jedi and a healer who does battle meditation to help
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah. Um. So long story short, they all die.
Okay, you're being very unceremonious, and so is the book. Farfalla gets beheaded, and it's just like he's just dead. They don't
Mm-hmm.
even like nothing. Like he's just gone. I'm like, that was very unceremonious for a character that we've been like getting to know for the past two books, and now his cap has been detated. I mean, it's it's just like my guy, you're just getting dismembered over here. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
sad. I kind of felt a little sad after that, but then I remembered that Bane's the guy I'm supposed to be rooting for until the next book when he's supposed to be weak.
But okay, so this fight actually goes on for like 2 chapters, so it actually is a
Yeah.
pretty long fight. But
Now, what I will say though, they do all die, but before Bane ends up killing Johan, he's going to conjure a force storm to kill him. The healer guy essentially creates a force bubble around him and Bane that causes the Force Storm to bounce back onto Bane, killing some of the Obelisks, which in turn starts killing Bane.
Mm. So, yeah. So all the Jedi are dead, but so is Bane now. So Xana becomes the Dark Lord of the Sith, and
I don't know if that's how it's supposed to go, though.
oh yeah, you're right. So Bane
Well, no,
is
no, no. What I'm
dying.
no, 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 no. That's fine. What I'm saying is the problem is Xana didn't beat Bane.
Oh.
That's the only issue.
So
The
so
only
she
issue
go
I
so
have.
she goes over and chops up Bane, and then makes it look like she beat him. So
No, that doesn't work. Doesn't work for me. Rewrite it. Rewrite it.
okay, well how about this? Okay, so
Give me
Bane's
something
not
better.
quite dead yet. Okay,
Okay, I can
okay,
accept that.
he's only mostly dead. Um,
Oh, that means slightly alive.
so we're all over the place with the references.
I
um,
wonder. I wonder if anyone listening to this podcast at any point in time is ever going to get all the references that we. Because I mean, let's be honest here, David. We're kind of all over the place with what we watch.
true, true. But yeah. So so they Xana takes Bane, and Derevit comes along too, because why not? Um,
What else is
to
he
and
supposed to do?
hmm,
What else is he supposed to do?
true.
Actually, he's a healer, so that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, but he kind of sucks at his job, and he can't do it. So they need a better healer.
Why is this guy not dead yet?
Um,
He's already gotten on my nerves, and I'm not even supposed to be evil.
hmm So they go find an old friend of Bane's.
What's his name? Something weird, I bet.
Um,
Isn't it Caleb?
I think so. I think his first name is Caleb.
Well, that's what I'm
Hang on.
saying. Is I saw it earlier, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Caleb. So I was gonna say something like that, say something stupid,
Yeah,
and
I'm
it's
trying.
like,
I'm looking for his last name. Hang
it's
on.
like Bob.
Caleb Bob.
You know, speaking of which, so I know last week we were briefly talking about it. It has nothing to do with Star Wars, but talking about Invincible, right? And I always forget Alan's character. Like I always
hmm
forget what his name is. And so anytime I'm at work and I'm talking to one of my friends about Invincible, I'm like, yeah, like I really enjoyed that part where they go over to what's his name, Bob or whatever. And he's like, you mean Alan? I was like, yeah, I know some basic guy name, some basic white guy name.
hmm But okay, so I didn't
So
find the
Caleb,
name. I didn't find the name yet, but
well, what use are you to
found
me?
I found the part in the book where is right after they defeated the Jedi, and Xana's basically trying to get Derevit to heal Bane, and she's like, basically like, what good are you? And she literally says, you're a criffing healer. Something.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing I've noticed a whole lot is their swear words. They
Mm,
they they say Criffin a lot. What even is that? What does that
I
mean?
don't know.
I
But
mean,
yes,
David, you might have just said something really, really bad. You might have said something racist on here, David. You can't do that.
maybe. Um, yeah, Caleb. But where's his last name?
Oh, dude doesn't have a last name.
Did they literally just call him Caleb the whole time?
I don't think so.
I thought they called him by last name most of the time, but everything I'm seeing here is Caleb.
Uh,
You know what? We're just gonna go with Caleb. So yeah, he's the healer that healed Bane in the last book. Bane had to threaten his daughter.
Wait, David, real quick, because I'm curious. How do you spell Griffin in the book? How's it spelled?
Go back and find it.
Well,
It's
be
like
quick about it.
Kriffing, I think.
I'm curious what this means. Okay, well, I mean, I figured this, but I didn't know if it had more of a meaning behind it. Uh, Criff or Griffin is a curse word in Star Wars, in the Star Wars universe. Is basically just supposed to be the F word.
Yeah.
Um, and I figured, I mean, it's used in a very similar way to, the F word, but it's one of those things where I was like, maybe it has more of a meaning behind it because a lot of things in Star Wars do, but it does not look like it has any more meaning than the fact that it's supposed to be a curse word of sorts,
Mm.
similar to
I mean, Star Wars has
yeah.
always had like made up profanity, like scruffy looking Nerf herder.
Yeah, yeah. Fair
Although
enough.
I don't know if that's actually like like common profanity because Leia almost like seems like she makes it up on the spot, like in that scene. So I don't know.
She's like trying to figure out what she's gonna say next
Yeah, yeah.
in the scene. Yeah, yeah. Well, now that that's out of the way,
But
um,
yeah. So what is how how does Caleb how does Xana manage to convince Caleb
my
to
name is Caleb Crawdad. There has been a murder. There is about to be a murder. Uh,
I apologize to anyone listening to this episode because we're like, oh boy. Um,
anyways, so
but
Caleb, remember in the last book when Caleb sticks his hand in a pot of boiling acid or
mhm,
soup as he calls it? Um, he
acid
doesn't feel anything. Acid soup.
acid soup. Careful. There.
Anyways, moving on very very quickly. Uh, but yeah. So he sticks his hand in some smelly soup over here, and he burns his hand. And it's one of those things where he's like, I don't feel pain. You can't hurt me. And Zen is like, well, now what? Your daughter's not here because you sent her away, which is important. Do keep that in mind. He sends his daughter away, tells her to change her name, completely leave him behind, and be untraceable. So she's like, I have no way of saving my master. I can't let him die because I am not ready to take on the mantle of Dark Lord. He has more to teach me. I need him alive. So what ends up happening is Caleb goes and says, "Hey, I will heal your master if you send a message to the Jedi telling the Jedi that he is here and he needs to be arrested, and you send that out. I'll start healing him. I'm also going to disable your ship so you can't get away." And she's like, "Fine, I have no other
It's not
choice."
worth it. She should just kill Caleb.
Not yet. Hey, you don't kill anything until it's done being useful. Words to live by.
Okay, so what ends up happening? I mean, I guess the Jedi show up and confiscate Darth
So,
Bane and then
confiscate? What is he? Is he a Swiss Army knife? Is this TSA? No, David. What happens is So we glossed over this because we jumped right to Caleb. When they first get to his camp, he's gone. There's nothing. There's not. There's nothing there. All his stuff is
He's
gone. He's
invisible.
gone. I don't. I don't know what to do with you.
Just the look of like disappointment you just gave me.
You should be used to it by now. But anyways, well, it turns it comes come to find out,
Blah, 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 blah.
I I completely expect David to edit all of this out. I said as my nose grew 14 inches.
It's already big enough, Wesley.
Shut up. This is why nobody likes you. Um. So, anyways, so come to find out, he after Bane came and not tortured him, but threatened to hurt his daughter. He was like, Bane's probably gonna come back at some point. So he built essentially a cellar underneath his uh house or whatever, so that he could hide underneath there and make it look like he wasn't there anymore. And so that's what he did. Xana uses that to her advantage, though. So Bane gets healed. All the Obelisks are gone. He's healed up. But the Jedi are coming. So Xana has to act quickly. Now Bane's like, I am not going to rot in a cell. I am not going to be executed by the Republic. You strike me down now. Do not do this to me. Like, just kill me. Get it over with. Xana's like, no, no, no. I have so much more to learn from you. I'm not ready for this. I need to save you. I need to keep you because I'm not ready to take the mantle of Dark Lord yet. So, what does she do? Well, while you're reading about it, I'm gonna tell you what happens. So the Jedi end up showing up on Rusan there. It's not Rusan. This
Ambria.
is it Ambria?
Yep.
Or is it
Ambria.
okay. Okay. So they end up showing up here on Ambria. And they see the dismembered pieces of a human. The arm is chopped up at each joint. The leg is chopped up at each joint. And the head is sitting on somewhat of a spike. This is the head of a
Or Darth Bane.
dark-haired, leathery face person. Not a baby smooth face like Darth Bane's, okay? It is the healer. It's Caleb. Caleb's head is on a spike now.
You lost a lot of weight really quick.
And then, out of nowhere, not Johan, Darvin jumps out, swinging a lightsaber like a maniac. And he gets sliced down. And the Jedi stand there all smug, like, we have just killed the last of the Sith. We are so good at what we do. They do search around to make sure that everything looks good, right? And that's all that they find. They find the dead Sith that they just killed, and they find the pieced up remains of this other guy. And they kind of piece together this story in their mind that this insane Sith Lord over here was hurt after killing all the 5 Jedi and came to Ambria to get the healer to heal him up. The healer ended up healing him, but He sent a message to the Jedi. The Sith got mad, killed the man, and then the Jedi showed up and they killed the Sith. And now the Sith are extinct. The Sith stink. They probably do, but it's beside the point because the true Sith were in the wine cellar. I'm getting a little tipsy, if you know what I mean.
I swear, sometimes that wasn't even on purpose on your part, but you even made a reference to our own, like, down the rabbit trail stuff there.
Yeah,
They're
we're
extinct, not this, not that they stink. Oh
yeah.
gosh, that video was like, we had a script, but I think that video was mostly ad lib. The final one.
Which one was that? I vaguely remember.
That's the
Oh wait,
one
no,
where
never
with
Mind.
Dave Danger and Wes Wild. It was early
Yeah,
season two.
okay, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but yes.
yeah. We
So
have
that's
another
kind of,
channel called Down the Rabbit Trail if you want to go check that out if you have not
yeah.
ever heard of that.
But that's kind of where Rule of Two
Now,
leaves
David,
us.
I do want you to do this. It's in the prologue. I want you to find, it's probably in the last one or two paragraphs. It might even be in the last paragraph. It might be
The
how the book
prologue or
ends.
epilogue?
Epilogue, because it comes after.
Hmm.
Um, but I want you to read what the exchange between Bane and Xana, with her talking about how he is still of use to her, but one day he won't be.
Hmm. Alright, let's see here. So Xana says, you still have much to teach me. I will continue to study at your feet, master. I will learn from your wisdom. I will discover your secrets, unlocking them one by one until everything you know, all your knowledge and all your power is mine. And once you have no and once you are no longer of use to me, I will destroy you. Bane raised an eyebrow at her words, and she could tell he approved. Her ambition was good. It would give her power. Her talents and abilities would continue to grow. In time, she would challenge her master to the right to rule. And only the stronger would survive. It was inevitable. It was the way of the Sith. One day I will surpass you, Xana warned him. And on that day, I will kill you, Lord Bane. But that day is not today.
It's a very so before all the events that we just went over with the healer getting killed and all that stuff. Uh, Darvin is trying to convince Xana to turn Bane in and to that she's not too far gone to this dark side, that she should maybe see about trying to join the Jedi, use her talents for good. He keeps saying it over and over again. Honestly, from when he finds her in the Jedi Temple until he dies, he keeps saying it over and over again that she's not too far gone. She's not too far gone. Xana is a full Sith Lord, and we see that in full effect at the end of this book. But obviously, we see it throughout this book as it goes on. You know, like I said earlier, how she never really does anything that doesn't necessarily work out for her benefit. Like she only is doing it because it's going to benefit her. She keeps Darvin around because he's a healer, and thinks that he can help Bane with the Orbilis problem. Um, you know, when he is no longer of any use to her, she kills him.
Mm,
Um, and you know, Same thing with Caleb. She keeps Caleb around long enough just to use him. And it's one of those things where it's like she is planning on taking over the mantle of Darth Lord of the Sith. She is fully bought in to what Bane is talking and teaching about. Um, just to briefly touch on, I mentioned earlier how I had already started the next book, um, and the Bane trilogy, the last book in it, and it starts out with Bane talking about how he's unsure if Xana is the right one to continue the rule of two and continue the Sith because he thinks she lacks ambition because it's been so long and she hasn't taken the initiative to try and defeat him. And it's one of those things where, you know, Xana is still waiting for the right moment and she hasn't seen that moment come. She still isn't sure, if she's learned all she can from her master. And that's the thing. That's the one thing that's interesting about the rule of two is when do you know that you've surpassed your master? When do you know that you've learned all that you can learn from him? We have that in the Plagueis novel. Palpatine isn't quite sure if he knows everything that Plagueis knew, but he feels relatively confident that you know he he knows enough, kind
Mm-hmm.
of a deal. So he goes on and takes on the role of becoming the Dark Lord of the Sith. You froze there for a second. Are you good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But it's one of those things where it's like, that there is some questions, and obviously there's a lot that could get lost throughout the ages. Now, obviously, uh, you know, as long as, which obviously things happen in between times, but as long as like holocrons keep being passed down and Sith text gets passed down and stuff like that, knowledge will continue to be passed down. But you know, the goal is for the master to eventually be surpassed.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, he has to teach them everything everything that they know. But there will be things that will get lost. But Xana definitely is right was the right choice on Bane's part because she's definitely ambitious. I mean, even from a young age, the reason she wanted to follow Bane was because she wanted power. That was a whole entire thing. She wanted power,
Mm-hmm.
and she never stops that.
But yeah, I think it is interesting to like think about where this is gonna go because I know you said you've already started the next book. I haven't yet, but um, I do know like a good bit of that book is their duel.
Mhm.
Um, which side note, why can't we get stuff like that in Star Wars? Like Robert and I, my brother, um, and I know you know who Robert is, Wes. It was clarifying for
You
people
sure?
listening. Um,
You knew I was gonna say something. Nobody
yeah.
likes you, David.
Um, but we were talking about that earlier about we were talking about Invincible and how what we originally were talking about is like basically a lot of people compare Viltrumites, Kryptonians, and Saiyans, from Dragon Ball. Um, but you really can't like compare Kryptonians to Viltrumites or Saiyans because Superman doesn't often fight, or at least not like, on screen or anything. In the comics probably, but not on screen or anything. Superman doesn't fight like, you know, people who are like the same power as him or more powerful than he is that often.
Yeah.
Like rarely ever. But all the time in Dragon Ball and in Invincible, you see the Saiyans and Viltrumites fighting each other and fighting, beings that are just as powerful as they are.
Yeah.
But
I will say,
in but in
go
both
ahead.
Dragon Ball and in more so in Dragon Ball, but in Invincible comics too, you get fights that will last. Like I know in the Invincible comics, there's several fights that last like 5 or 6 issues. And I know for the manga, the Dragon Ball manga, there's the same thing. There'll be fights that'll like last an entire volume, like just one fight. It's like, why can't we get that stuff in Star Wars? Like imagine like a Clone Wars style show where you literally have a duel that goes on for 3 episodes.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Well, the thing too is, and that's one thing that we see a lot in these books, and uh, you kind of get to see in some of the other Old Republic books we haven't gotten to, but that I've read, and you might have read one or two of them. But you see how like these fights, while they may not in of themselves take out a large portion of the book, they like the fight that we had at the end of this one, where Bane, and Xena took on the 5 Jedi. Um, they might not always do that, but you get to see just how long these fights actually are. Like some of them aren't that long. And I
Mm,
will say that there is a because of how it is, and like, we've talked about this before with Revenge of the Sith, right? How when Palpatine was fighting, like the reason that 3 Jedi Masters were able to get dispatched so quickly by Palpatine was because of how fast he was moving. He was a blur. Mace Windu was able to keep up with him, but there was a certain level of skill, and these fights are going so fast. Like sometimes they may not take that long. But with a book, you can explain all the little details to it. With a comic, you can explain all the little details to it. Sometimes you can't always do that
mm,
in film, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be cool for it to get slowed down a little bit and for us to see it drag on a little bit to where, you know, like the reason that the fight between Bane and Xana takes so long is, and I think it's mentioned in the first chapter or two of the next book. But the fight is supposed to push both of them to their limits. They're supposed to, like, neither one is supposed to be, like, Xana can't wait for Bane to get old and decrepit before she can take him on because that just defeats the purpose. But she also has to wait till Bane is not as powerful as her. She has to be more powerful than him so she can defeat him. Otherwise, she gets defeated and he has to take on a new apprentice. So it's supposed to take them to their limits. And so seeing fights like that where both sides are taken to their limit and, to the point of exhaustion, like that would be really cool to see in Star Wars in some way, shape, or form on the screen.
mm. Telling you, man, we need Tales of the Sith.
Yes, I would love. Hey, Tales of the Sith, whole entire episode is just a duel. And the thing is too is like don't even just box yourselves into a sword fight. A duel does not just have to be a sword fight. Like
Okay, look.
going back to this duel here. I don't know how much you know about it, but there is a portion of this duel that is completely force.
Mm.
Like it's all within the realm of the force.
So, okay,
Like
yes, fight choreography looks amazing, but do you know what animation gives you the freedom to do? It allows you to make force storms without having to spend a ton of money in special effects because it's
yeah,
animation. it doesn't have to look realistic.
Yeah. It there's so much, and the thing is too is like if you do something along the lines of like Tales of the Sith, right? There are so many different force abilities that you could even tap into. Like you don't just have to do Force Lightning or Force Storm. Like there are other force abilities that you could use in a fighting scenario, you know. It's not all, and you could have a complete force duel of just two
Mm-hmm.
people going at it with their powers in the force. You know, there's a lot of things you could do with it, and it probably will never get done, at least not in the way that we want it to be done. Such as Star Wars. C'est la vie.
Mm-hmm.
C'est la Star Wars. I know that's not the, but anyways.
But yeah, it would be really cool to see this. I know we're probably either never going to get it or they're going to ruin the idea.
Probably, yes.
Which, again, Tales of the Empire was all right, but Tales of the Sith, like,
Yeah, Tears of the Empire, not bad, but not what we wanted.
yeah. And again,
Like when
I'm still waiting on Tales of the Jedi season 2 to actually get some more like background on some stuff. Like,
yeah,
I feel like we
I
need like
see.
a Balin Skull during the Clone Wars. I know I've
Yeah,
said that before,
yeah.
but
I wonder if we would get that um before Ahsoka season 2.
maybe, maybe.
Although I think what was announced when they said that they were working on new animated shows, I think they were actually working on new shows, not new seasons.
Mm.
But it'd be really good if they could do another season of Tales of the Jedi. That was really good.
You
I
know,
liked a lot of the Dooku that we got out of that.
I can even give you so the way they've been formatting those seasons is 6 episodes, 3 and 3.
Hmm.
Like Tales of the Jedi was 3 Dooku, 3 Ahsoka. Tales of the
Hmm.
Empire was 3 Barasafi, 3 Morgan Elsbeth.
Yeah.
So if they do another Tales of the Jedi, do 3 Balin Skull during the Clone Wars, and 3 basically following Master and Apprentice, the book.
Hmm.
Do Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan
That wouldn't be bad. But I mean,
for
honestly,
Phantom
you think
Menace.
about it. Think about how influential and how important the character of Qui-Gon Jinn is in
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars, and then how much we have of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very small. I mean, obviously, like, books and comics and all that stuff, sure.
Which
But like outside of that,
that was another thing that I liked about Tales of the Empire, or Tales of the Jedi. Even though it followed Dooku,
hmm,
we got a lot of Qui-Gon as well.
yeah. So that was nice to see
Mm-hmm.
see a little bit of that and get more of him.
And one that also might be kind of cool would be if go back even further and do Yoda and Dooku as an apprentice.
That would be good. I get on board with that.
So
There's so many
there's
things they could do.
or another idea too would be go back and do, I know tons of people love Mace Windu and love the legend story about like how he got the purple lightsaber and everything. Do that as uh Tales of the Jedi arc.
Yeah,
Like
there's a lot
there's
that could
so
be
many
done.
ideas for Tales of the Jedi or Tales of the Sith.
Mm. I mean, Star Wars history is so long, vast, wide, lot to it. There's a lot of things that they could do. And I do understand there's an aspect to it of, only so much content can come out. But there's certain things that like I feel like fans have been asking for. Not even just you and me, like fans have been asking for certain things for a while, and it's just like it just seems to be falling on deaf ears. It's
Mhm.
like, why can't you just give us what we want? Like, if you give us what we want, we give you what you want, money.
It's
Like,
like, okay, but it's also really annoying because, like, okay, we've been asking for stuff like, oh, Knights of the Old Republic or Darth Bane or something like that. And then
mhm.
we get, this announcement of like, oh, they're making something before um episode 1. Oh, this is going to be really cool. Wait, you're telling me you set this during the time period when the Sith were in hiding?
You do realize that this is a time period in which nothing happened, which is why we don't have anything that happens during this time period. Right? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like, why?
Yeah. The High Republic era is not a time period in which they should have started trying to do anything in. Like, I understand because it was a time in which they didn't have material for, it gave them the ability to have more creative liberty. But it's like, here's the thing, you don't need to have creative liberty, not in the sense of storytelling necessarily. Like, we have stories that we like. Your job is to figure out how to make that work on the big screen. That's literally all we
Okay,
ask. That's all we want.
adapt the Bane trilogy.
Yeah,
It doesn't even have to be exact, shot for shot. Just adapt that
yeah.
and,
Keep the overarching story.
yeah.
There's so much out there. It's sad. We've done this rant many times. Uh,
Mhm.
probably old and tired at this
Well,
point. But it's just like it's what are you doing? What are you doing? It's right there for you. Plenty of things for you, and you just still fumbling the bag.
d come on, I mean, come on, Disney. How have you taken one of the most recognizable and beloved IPs on the planet and like made it just like everything you've made just goes straight in the toilet. Like,
That acid soup again.
oh gosh. On that note, we've been recording for over 2 hours. Have you got any
I'm
save
I'm
rounds?
about I'm about what? What did you say? Did I have a stroke in my ear?
Do you have anything else you would like to say?
Okay, I don't know what you said, but I didn't hear it right. So either you had a stroke or my ears did. But no, David, I don't have anything else to say except for thanks for listening all the way to the end. Leave a like on the video, comment down below, tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and see you next time. Now this is podcasting. Uh, End it now, David. End it now.
Now this is podcasting.